Well, guys, it's August, so you know what that means. Banger, baby! Hey guys, Ruminating Reaper here. So yep, it's that time of the year. I'm here in Bangor. I love that this has become a yearly staple of the channel at this point, to be fair. It's basically become a new favourite of cinema of mine to go to. I love it here. So yeah, I'm here in Bangor. As you can tell by the apparel, it's Marvel time, and I gotta say, this one is gonna be fantastic.
Say that again?
Yep, I'm about to head in to see the Fantastic Four First Steps. This does look quite good. I've been looking forward to this. The Fantastic Four in the MCU is something I've wanted for quite a while now. So I've got my fingers crossed they will deliver, especially with the whole like retro futurist 60s vibe. It does look quite interesting, so I have my fingers crossed that this will be a good one. But the only way to find out is to head in and get some snacks and get seated for the Fantastic Four.
Your goodness has
He's going to repair the entire world. You always do.
So I've got my popcorn here and a blue frozen Fanta, the trademark Fantastic Four colours, ready to watch Marvel's first family make their MCU debut. Let's go. So, the Fantastic Four First Steps. I'm back from seeing it. This is directed by Matt Shakman, who previously worked on WandaVision for Marvel, which of course had lots of different period aesthetics across its 9 episodes. This is also written by Josh Friedman, who of course has story credits on all the Avatar sequels. So obviously, yes, when you're pairing someone who has experience in translating period aesthetics to screen, and somebody who has experience in writing close-knit family dynamics, yeah, I had my fingers crossed that the pair would be able to deliver the goods on the long-awaited MCU debut of the Fantastic Four. But does Marvel's first family get a worthy first entry into the MCU? Let's find out. So the film sees the Fantastic Four, Reed Richards, Sue Storm, Ben Grimm, and Johnny Storm, beloved heroes of Earth 828, balance using their powers to fight crime and being a fully functioning family unit. Soon, the four face their ultimate test as a family when Shalla-Bal arrives, marking their planet for death at the hands of Galactus. And so, with the fate of the world and their family unit in the balance, the four race against time to save the day and prevent Galactus from devouring the planet. The Fantastic Four have had an interesting history when it comes to big screen adaptations. There was first the Roger Corman movie in the 90s, a low-budget offering that was filmed and shelved as a rights-holding move, but it broke out of containment and developed a cult following, as Corman does. Then there was the two Tim Story movies, which obviously have a huge nostalgia following. And then there is Fant4stic, an absolute atrocity, of which its only element of value was the Say That Again meme. So obviously, yes, we were waiting for the defining big screen take of the Fantastic Four, and the hope was Kevin Feige would be the one to do that. Happily, yeah, I'd say this is probably the best Fantastic Four movie. Saying that, of the comic book movies this summer, I did prefer Superman. I saw it a second time last week, and I just absolutely love everything James Gunn did with that film. But, that being said, I did enjoy First Steps. It certainly has its flaws, but it is, one of the stronger MCU offerings of recent. Now, credit where credit is due. The film actually does something quite fresh and interesting with the MCU formula, setting it on an alternate Earth, finally taking advantage of the multiverse for something other than nostalgia bait and cameos. Obviously, we're going to get plenty of that in the next two Avengers movies, but, it's nice that we're finally doing something unique with it. And talking of unique, I absolutely love this film's aesthetic, the whole 60s retro future thing. It is just gorgeous. The production design is absolutely top notch. Really, lovingly bringing to life this sort of 1960s vision of the future with, flying cars. Yep, the Fantastic Car features very prominently. And of course, also the Fantastic Four's robot companion, Herbie, but also very much keeping it to the decor of the 60s. It looks beautiful, and that vibrant, colorful production design really translates to the cinematography, delivering some of the most visually dynamic cinematography of the MCU in recent memory. It looks beautiful. And of course, it's topped off with Michael Giacchino's score, which, perfectly captures the era, but also delivering a sound that feels grand and heroic. It's a really, really well made movie. But I think what really makes it so compelling to watch is the emphasis on the family dynamic in a way that Dominic Toretto would be proud of. I really enjoyed the different personalities of the four. Pedro Pascal, eases all doubts as Reed. He does a really great job as this, troubled genius trying to balance, being the smartest man in the universe with being a caring, loving family man. And of course, it's contrasted very nicely with Vanessa Kirby as Sue, who's, sort of maternal instincts, drive her. And I really liked the chemistry between the two of them as a couple. And in fact, the chemistry between the four of them in general is really, really strong. A particular highlight being the sort of moments of comedy and the sort of good natured brotherly bickering between Ben and Johnny. Ebon Moss-Bachrach as Ben being the sort of more straight one, while Joseph Quinn as Johnny is the more brash, hot headed one. And it does lead to some good laughs, but not the usual, well, that just happened, MCU Joss Whedon quip fest that we've come to expect. It feels more subtle and restrained. And of course, with how the four personalities play off each other, it really creates for some very interesting character dynamics that are well worth getting invested in. But beyond the family stuff, what I really liked was the emphasis on the sci-fi element too. Obviously, yes, there's plenty of comic booky action spectacle with fun and creative uses of the Four's powers. But what I loved is that the action took more of a sci-fi approach, and a particular standout being a whole segment in space. That whole scene was just, well, it was fantastic. And of course, it's brought to life with some pretty strong visual effects. Now, saying that, it's not all perfect. There are some effect shots here that do feel a little ropey, but by and large, I think it is visually pretty stellar. And of course, that sort of cosmic element really sells the stakes of its big threats. Obviously, yes, we have Julia Garner as Shalla-Bal, the Silver Surfer, and I actually find her character quite interesting. They did some unexpected things with her that really, took her in a very uninteresting direction. And so Garner really sells how these elements, shape her character. But of course, what we're here for, the big threat, Galactus. And of course, right from the moment Ralph Ineson was announced to be playing him, I was just like, yep. Because, his, obviously he has just such a great voice, and that really translates to a threat as, big and booming as Galactus. And the sound design, to really make his voice seem even bigger and more booming. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And I loved that they got his, comic accurate look down pat, none of that cloud shit, this is the real deal. Now, for all the stuff the film is trying to juggle, for the most part, it does do it very well. It keeps up a very good, momentum throughout. But at times, the pacing can be a little bit uneven, and this is down to the fact that the film has clearly had stuff cut out to fit that hour 55-minute runtime, and it shows. There's some elements that feel pretty rushed and underdeveloped compared to how fleshed out, the central family dynamic and big sci-fi threat is. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the sort of side elements here, like Paul Walter Hauser as Mole Man. He is pretty fun. But there's other stuff like a subplot involving a sort of a romance between Ben and a local woman played by Natasha Lyonne feels a bit half-baked. But when the film is, in its element, focusing on that central family stuff, it is just, it is, in its element, and it, is hitting the home runs. Right through to, obviously, the big final act with, obviously, yes, the big comic book spectacle of Galactus coming to Earth, and, the final act, in terms of its, character arcs, does deliver some very satisfying payoffs, and obviously, yes, with the family being at the core of it, it keeps things engaging to watch throughout, even amongst the big CGI stuff, it never loses sight of that. Unfortunately, though, the big action set piece feels a little bit anticlimactic. Like, considering they've built Galactus up as, such a big threat, the whole sort of final battle with him feels a bit, was that it? But, thankfully, any sort of issues regarding an anticlimactic ending are more than overcome by just how satisfying the family stuff is. And honestly, yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing more of the Fantastic Four in the MCU, and looking forward to seeing them in Doomsday. Overall, the Fantastic Four First Steps isn't quite fantastic, but it is, thanks to its unique aesthetic and approach, and of course its emphasis on the central family dynamic, it does deliver the best big screen iteration of Marvel's first family. Out of 10, the Fantastic Four First Steps gets a 7.5. So, let me know down in the comments, have you seen Fantastic Four First Steps? What did you think of it? What's your favourite big screen iteration of the Fantastic Four? What did you think of Pedro Pascal as Reed? Did he ease any of your doubts about his casting? And are you looking forward to seeing more of this version of the Fantastic Four in the MCU to come? Let me know all that down in the comments. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you're new. And don't forget to turn on post notifications so you don't miss an upload.